authority meeting. Appreciate everyone making the trip. This is one of our better in-person turnouts. We've got a good agenda today. Before we get started, though, I did want to start with a safety message, as we always do. With it, the sun coming out and the weather starting to turn, I thought a relevant safety message would be on preparing for your spring yard work. If anybody's gotten out in their yard and started doing any of the spring cleanup, I'm reminded actually of my old boss sits to my right. This is a safety message I believe he gave a year ago from personal experience. But before you start your yard work, it is always good to go through your checks, make sure you're wearing the right clothes, right PPE, so you don't get dust and things in your eyes. And it's always good to check your equipment. It's probably been sitting in the shed or in the garage for the winter. It's good to check that everything is fueled up and running properly before you get out there and actually start using it and something goes wrong. So, and then the other thing I always remind myself, probably in the wrong way, is it's good to actually stretch before you start doing all the yard work so you don't hurt yourself while you're working or are much more sore when you finish. So anyway, hopefully it's warm enough in the next few weeks that we all actually are working in our yards. So I think it would be useful, especially for anybody joining us on the phone or joining us for the first time here in the room, that we go around and just introduce ourselves so we know who's here, and we can also make a record. Brandy, would you, before we do that though, can you just go over who is on the Teams meeting with us? I think we have Randy Heflin, but are there other folks that are with us?
David.
Yes, can you hear me? This is David Esser, Commission staff at the State Corporation Commission. Thank you.
David.
Thanks.
Randy Heflin. Randy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Randy, do you want to introduce yourself? I'm not sure you heard thing. All right, so Scott, can you pass the mic over to Ken, and we'll start there and just move our way down.
Okay, yes.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Kristen.
Thanks.
All right, Ken Ball. I'm at George Mason University. Advanced Night Virginia Energy.
Scott Koppel, BWXT.
Andrew Hutton, Jefferson Lab. And Jeff Witt with the Vent Hub.
Howard Kobe, Virginia Energy.
Kate Wade, Virginia Energy Consortium.
And Tom DePonte with Framerton.
Mary Niemeyer with Yoico USA.
Eric Farr with Dominion Energy.
John Capps, Virginia's Community Colleges.
Tim Stellar, Virginia Economic Development Partnership.
Brian Bullen, Haynes and Boone.
Calvin Lowe, Camp University. Jeff Fox, University of Virginia.
Matt Blackwater, State Corporation President staff.
Anthony Joe Lurch with the Virginia Association of Counties.
Great. So Vince or Larry, are you all going to do the Virginia Energy update?
Larry, one pretty fun. That's some issues. I guess.
One update from us is that through the Virginia Clean Energy Innovation Bank that is housed at the agency, we've awarded a grant to George Mason University for the installation of an SMR control room simulator, which is being developed by NewScale, so going to help students prepare to work in these new types of facility. And I believe I'm right, then it'll be installed by the end of the spring.
That's right.
Okay, so exciting news there, and that's all from the agency.
And I'll just add, we're kind of a grand opening. In covering up with so if anyone would like to come up and be part of our opening ceremony and check it out, I'd be delighted and happy to visit us. It's actually in our Arlington campus, which we call Mason Square. Yeah,
Okay.
I need the details. Okay, I'll get the details. It's a brand new building. We just opened the building in January.
Yeah, that'll be great. If you can send that to Brandy so she can send it out to her, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, so we are fortunate to have Kristen Cullen with us from Commonwealth Fusion. Commonwealth Fusion Systems, sorry, that one was shorten it. Kristen is the Vice President of Global Policy and Public Affairs. We asked her to join us since you may have seen the announcement, the very exciting announcement in December of Commonwealth's intention to site their first facility right in this area in Chesterfield County. And I know they've are working with Eric, with you all at Dominion. So we wanted Kristen just to give us a little bit of an overview. I know we go out of our way to both talk about fusion and fission, but since fusion is newer to this group, I think this is a great entree, and will be great to hear about this exciting project. So Kristen, we are all watching the screen in the room, so we can see. We have your slides up, and please take as much time as you wish.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here and to present to this group today. I've been with Commonwealth Fusion Systems for a little over 6 years. We spun out as a company in 2018. So I was one of the kind of first employees with the company, kind of early days when we were still working out of MIT and out of kind of the MIT accelerator at the Engine in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And we're still based here in Massachusetts, but recently made the exciting announcement on where our first power plant will be located. So very excited. Kind of in our kind of future in Virginia. Go to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we're a relatively new company. We've raised more than $2 billion in private, almost all private funding. We've had some small kind of DOE grants, but we are mostly entirely privately funded. We are about, I think, 1,100 full-time employees now. So we've seen some very exciting growth, and we're growing very quickly. And I think we've built a really exciting team of problem solvers that come from companies like SpaceX, Tesla, Boeing, employees that really know how to tackle some of these big, tough tech projects like Fusion is. The kind of early days of the company when the team was still at MIT, the thinking was, how do we build a fusion power plant on the fastest path possible? And the track that we're on is using a well-studied and well-known machine, fusion machine called a tokamak. There's been more than 150 of these types of fusion machines built around the world, and combine them with a new innovation in high temperature superconducting magnets. So the first kind of few years of the company was focused on developing and constructing this high temperature superconducting magnet technology. We demonstrated that in collaboration with MIT in 2021. We raised our Series B round after a couple months after that. I think that was the kind of big validator for how important that magnet technology was for fusion energy. And then we're manufacturing those magnets at scale at our manufacturing facility in Devens, Massachusetts. And we're going to build them into our power plant prototype, which is under construction right now in Massachusetts. So that's underway, and that's very exciting. But the next step, and because we have high confidence and really understand kind of these types of fusion machines, is the power plant. So that's kind of what we're focused on now, and that's what we'll be building in Virginia. But just to take a step back and talk a little bit about what is fusion, and I think this group probably knows, but I'll kind of talk about it anyway. Next slide, please. So fusion is actually the exact opposite process of fission. In fusion, we're going to use fuel, isotopes of hydrogen as our fuel. And instead of splitting, we fuse isotopes of hydrogen. We use deuterium and tritium together. And we get helium, a neutron, and enormous amounts of energy in that process. It's incredibly energy dense, and we use very small amounts of fuel. In fact, we like to say that fusion will generate 200 million times the energy per reaction as burning coal. Next slide. So essentially, fusion at the end of the day just creates a heat source, and our power plants will operate. Other than the kind of fusion part, will operate in a very similar way to kind of how a gas plant could operate. This will be baseload firm power, but you can also dispatch it as needed, kind of ramp it up and down. We think these will be scalable. We'll be building them all 400 megawatts, all the same kind of size out of our kind of manufacturing facility. We have a lot of siting flexibility. We believe this is kind of a really new, exciting technology in terms of the fact that it's going to be a clean baseload power, and also that it will be kind of secure, in terms of energy independence and energy security issues. So we're excited about this technology. And next slide. And just talk a little bit about kind of the global fusion landscape right now. There are more than 40, I think it's maybe even 45 private fusion companies. There's been more than $8 billion raised for the commercial fusion industry. The majority of the companies are in the US, but as you can kind of see here, we are seeing private fusion companies pop up all around the world. Kind of racing to try to get to this kind of moment of commercial fusion power on the grid. And I think the first important step in that is to demonstrate that you can get net energy from fusion in a kind of commercially relevant machine. And that's really what we're focused on doing here in Massachusetts right now. And we're set to turn that machine on in 2026. We're also seeing a lot of different governments kind of enter the race. Specifically, China is making big investments in their public fusion program. Of course, the US has kind of long been involved in their public fusion program. The UK, Japan, Korea, Germany has made some recent developments trying to get their regulatory process to a place that would be industry friendly as well. Next slide. This is our facility in Massachusetts. This is where we're building our power plant prototype. We'll be demonstrating 14 of the 17 major systems in fusion power plants. So we will have a good understanding of how these systems will work, and importantly, how the economics will look for our power plants. You can see that's kind of, this is actually aged a little bit. We have installed, since this picture was taken, more equipment in our kind of tokamak hall, we call it. That's where we'll be building the fusion power plant. Next slide. And so that machine that we're building in Massachusetts is called SPARC. It's actually an acronym for smallest possible arc. ARC is our power plant, and that's what we're building in Chesterfield County, Virginia. Right now we've selected the site for our very first ARC. And we are preparing to start construction. So all the work that needs to go into that site to get it ready. So very excited for that. I think I mentioned this is going to be a 400 megawatt net plant that we'll be building, the very first one in Virginia. So excited about that. Next slide. Here's the site. This was actually a 2.5-year siting process. And the decision was not necessarily that we were going to build this in the US. We were waiting to see kind of how the NRC was going to regulate fusion. We were looking at a number of other countries, specifically the UK as well. But then we really zoned in when we had regulatory certainty in the process on in the US, looked at a number of sites. I think, a number of reasons we like Virginia. We think not only is this an important site to demonstrate and connect fusion power on the grid. But we also think this is an important showcase site as our first power plant. We think we'll be taking a lot of tours of important stakeholders through. It's an incredibly accessible site off of 95, in proximity to a major airport, in proximity to Richmond generally. We think the kind of skilled workforce in the region is very important. And I think our experience has been that we will have strong partners, and this was an important part of our siting criteria at all levels, from state to county to local. That was an important part of the process. And we will have a partnership with Dominion. This is a Dominion-owned site. And that was another kind of attractive reason to learn from the public utility in this process. Next slide. This is a rendering of the ARC power plant. It looks pretty similar to what our Spark prototype facility looks like now. And this is kind of early days. This will probably evolve a little bit, but kind of what you'll see if you drive by the road on our Chesterfield County site. And the next slide. This is our timelines. So where we're at right now is we are manufacturing key components to our commercial demonstration. That's Spark. That's underway. We are set to be operational in 2026, and we'll continue to kind of ramp up performance from there, getting better results. In parallel, we have a team that's working on designing and deploying ARC. And the goal is to have ARC deploy with power on the grid in the early 2030s. And that is the first ARC, the very first one that we'll have in Virginia. So next slide, I think that's the last one though. Just an kind of a bird's eye view of our facility in Massachusetts. And we're excited to have, as we start development, to have similar pictures coming up in Virginia. So that's all I have, but happy to answer questions.
So that they can see.
Great. Well, thank you, Kristen. That was really interesting to see. I have a question, but let me look around the room for anybody else who wants to kick us off with any questions for Kristen. It's all right. I'll go first. So I guess, Kristen, you kind of talked a little bit about the characteristics of the Chesterfield site, but looking at all the different locations that you kind of explored, what kind of set Virginia apart? I mean, you described the energy demand and some of the other things, but what were kind of the differentiating factors about Virginia?
Yeah, I think in terms of physical attributes, we really found that there were a lot of good sites where kind of we could have put our fusion power plant. And I think what we were really looking for the first plant was a place that was really accessible, where we were close to an interconnect. Obviously, that was driving important, a lot of the search. But really, we needed a place where we're going to have strong relationships at all levels of government and community and stakeholders, and a place that we're going to be able to train the workforce needed to build a first of a kind plant. So those were kind of unique characteristics that I think brought this site up to the top of our list pretty quickly. And also, I think I mentioned, but having kind of the partnership with the public utility and a strong partner, learning kind of the learnings we'll be able to get from Dominion and connecting to the grid and kind of other learnings was really important to us.
Scott Koppel, BWFC. So two questions for you. They're not really connected. One, I was just curious on scaling going, I guess, from your Spark to your ARC, if there's concerns there or things that, vulnerabilities in terms of just getting to where you want to go on the actual power plant when it comes to scaling up. The second question is more from a Virginia perspective. Where are you at in comparison with your competitors in the fusion marketplace in terms of their build timelines, because there's no doubt fusion is hard. It's we talk about it a lot. And it's just no doubt it's been hard because no one's gotten there yet. But it's awesome if you can do it.
Yeah, so CFS is the largest fusion company in the world. So it's the largest private company. We believe that we are quite a bit further along, and that's really because we're building a machine that's been built before. So there's not really any secrets to building tokamaks. The world's built tokamaks before, but we are combining it with this breakthrough magnet technology. So that really enables us to build a machine kind of with proven physics, um, combined with this novel technology. So really what you have, what I think makes CFS unique is that this is an engineering challenge, not a physics challenge. And so that's kind of what we're facing with. Yeah, I mean, there's always engineering challenges every day as you're building kind of a first of a kind technology. You know, we have quite a big supply chain team, so focused on kind of building up the supply chain to support not only Spark, but ARC and future ARCs, and how do you make those investments? Those kind of come to mind. And I'm sorry, I just I missed another question that you had.
Yeah, I was just curious on where do you compare? Because obviously, this is great if you can do this in Virginia. I think we're all in this room supportive of that. So where are your competitors at in terms of states? They might be, you don't have to name the companies or the states, but where are you sort of if you were to plot all you and your competitors on the timeline, who's going to get there first and how do you compare since you're doing this in Virginia?
Yeah, so in terms of kind of the competitive analysis, I would say that what you've seen is lots of companies over the last 6 years pop up. So even when I started at CFS, there were only a handful of private fusion companies, and still at that point, I think fusion was mostly happening in national labs and universities. So over a very short period of time, you've seen more and more companies start raising private funding and kind of emerge on the scene. I think and a lot of these companies are doing really interesting things. And there's a Fusion Industry Association, and actually CFS works very closely with that industry association. And I think you certainly see kind of a real collaboration among these companies, because at this point, there's a lot of areas of policy that we all need to work together on. But you're certainly seeing kind of this race shape up among private companies and also governments trying to get kind of fusion to market as fast as possible. So I think everyone is taking different approaches. Some of them are similar. I think CFS's approach is unique in terms of a tokamak with high temperature superconducting magnets, but you see other types of approaches based on different types of fusion machines. Some that may have kind of a higher risk profile, but if they can build it, they might be able to build it smaller and faster if they kind of prove out those physics challenges. So there's lots of exciting different companies taking different approaches, and everyone's kind of on different timelines right now, but I think we're all racing for the same goal. That helps.
Hey, Kristen, this is Ronnie Smith. To what extent will the Nuclear Regulatory Commission or other regulatory agencies be involved in the review licensing?
Yeah, great question. So about 2 years ago, the NRC commissioners voted unanimously to regulate fusion under 10 CFR Part 30. So kind of a byproduct materials approach, which means that if a state is an agreement state, which Virginia is an agreement state, that means that the state can actually issue the radiological license to operate. So they will be involved, and they're still kind of in their rulemaking process right now. But that was an important decision for us.
Have they established the rules by which the state will, like 10 CFR 50 has rules, but have they established the rules by which the state will do the review?
That's still in progress.
Okay. Thank you.
I was wondering if, what extent you were planning on dictating or depending upon grant funding to be on again, off again in a week, but in any event, is.
Is the mic on? I think she's having difficulty hearing.
Sorry, could you hear me? Yeah, I was asking about whether your plans and your timeline were dependent upon, either direct or grant funding from the federal government, Department of Energy or otherwise.
I think the question was about grant funding from the federal government. Yeah, so we receive some small amounts of grant funding right now, something called the Infuse program, basically, which allows CFS and other fusion companies to partner with national labs on projects, and the national lab gets the funds, and we both benefit from kind of the outcome of the research. And then there's a program that was established called the Milestone Program under DOE that basically modeled after the NASA COTS program that enabled commercial space. And that was funded, kind of some small funding. We hope that increases. CFS was awarded about $15 million from that, and that allows us to kind of set milestones, and have kind of matching funds from the federal government at kind of limited risk to the taxpayer.
I'll follow up on that. What is the state doing for you? State of Virginia.
State of Virginia. Yeah, so we're in talks with the state. We think, I think very importantly, we think there's kind of good synergy with the state to develop some programs to support workforce development and kind of innovation to support the industry here, talking about kind of some incentives and I think those are, I know there's talks of how do we kind of engage at the kind of university, community college levels. So those are all kind of ongoing conversations. Really positive conversations that we're excited about.
I'm just clarifying also Scott's question. Did the Virginia Energy Rebate Program also something you all benefited from?
Sorry, do you mind repeating the question? It's just a little hard to hear in the room.
I'm sorry. The Virginia Rebate Program, isn't that something also that has been a benefit to you all?
I'm not sure about that program, or if I could. I'm not sure if I can hear it correctly. Yeah, I can try to follow up on that one.
Well, Kristen, thank you so much for joining us. I think one thing we will appeal to you on is a lot of the issues I imagine you'll be facing as you develop your project are similar to ones that folks in this room and on the authority have faced or are working on. So specifically workforce, I think there is a lot of collaboration that could be done there. So please see us as a resource. I know you've connected with April and BNEC. But if there's anything else, the authority or members here that can do to help you as you develop your project, we're very much excited for the opportunity and happy to support. But thank you for joining us today.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
And you're welcome to stick around if you want. I imagine you've got a busy day, but you're welcome to stick around for the meeting as we continue on. But thank you again.
Thanks.
I will note that the Virginia Clean Energy Innovation Bank did announce that they have $1 million for its initial funding as a commitment to the project when it was announced. So.
Great. And then I'm sure Tim can come up with some now. That's Tim Sweller from the Virginia Economic Development Partnership that I'm sure they would love to help support. Okay, so moving on, I think we're going to move to the VNEC update and have April give us that.
Okay, we're good.
Well, I'm just gonna try, I know it says I have a lot of slides there, but we're trying to go through this quickly. So don't have that many. Legislature, we didn't have any legislation this year, which was kind of nice. But I can breathe going out of session. But what we did do is we did go up there and do a lot of education and preparing for 2026. Again, the BCU students, ANS program came in. They were amazing as always and very impressive. In fact, we'll be doing a follow-up meeting with a legislator that wants to take them out for lunch to talk more about what they're doing. It was really neat to have some students that had, one of the students had it was going for a degree. Was a great experience. We're doing a lot of for 2026. We have a couple asks that we're going to want this time year, and workforce being one of them. In 2023, we had a vehicle bill passed supporting nuclear education to support putting a plan together for that. We had developed, along with Ben Hub, a working group for workforce. We have nearly 16 members, and they include representatives from industry, community colleges, universities, data centers, labor unions, economic development, and government. It's been a really good conversation. We've had, I think we're 4 meetings now, but it's been really neat. They've learned a lot from us, but we're also learning a lot from the community colleges and what we have here in Virginia. It's been a great partnership. The community college system had me come down and speak to a meeting that they were having 2 weeks ago. We got a lot of good response from that, so it's been a neat partnership to develop with that. Then, one of the things that we're working on, I told you about last fall, that we had our first Nuclear 101 meeting in Richmond. That was very successful. We have 2 this week. We have one in Hampton Roads and one in Richmond on Friday. We partnered up with the Nuclear Innovation Alliance again. We have a total about 40 people in each event. I think it's pretty well representative, and I'm going with the fact that hopefully, we only invited elected officials, economic development, those that are active in the chamber, academia, it's just a stakeholder. And hopefully, we'll get invited back to go and do others in other communities. We'll be doing one in Northern Virginia, which will look a lot different than it used to. It'll be shorter, but we'll be doing one in Northern Virginia in August. This is the election year, so probably in the fall we won't get anything done. So our last chance we'll do one. It will be in August in Northern Virginia, prepared for the legislature. Next slide. So when we had our meeting last year about the strategic plan, it seemed like almost a whole different world. It was before the announcement of ABCO with their site in Lynchburg. we had a presidential election. But one of the big other things that happened is that Bob Bailey was the acting director for Green Hub, and Jeff was going to speak more to this and we give no role and Green Hub. But having Jeff come on board is definitely going to change this last 4 weeks. And there's a lot of projects that Green Hub is working on that we really want to make sure are represented in the strategic plan. So I don't have it ready for you all to look at just yet, but we're getting closer. I want to make sure it represents and that it's a good plan for us to go forward the next 4 years and represents all the things that we need and have to be working on. Go to some slides to skip the next one. So the outline covers the current nuclear energy landscapes, the importance that we're at now. And also, you go to the next one too. It's also going to look at similar to what we did last time. It's where we're at by the numbers, how much energy we need, how much we're producing. We'll have an executive summary like we did as well last time, highlighting our goals. Next slide. We'll also be talking about the evolution of nuclear power, why we need it, the importance. And then when we talk about our guiding principles as well. These are all things that we talked about during our meeting and we developed. Next slide. So these are the subheadings that we have, and we're going to be talking about what we're doing in Hampton Roads, the work we're doing in Lynchburg, what we're doing with workforce, how we're innovating. That's a big part of it in Hub and the universities, and also we're going to be highlighting nuclear medicine. Although we do a lot for nuclear energy, but we're also looking at nuclear medicine. I just had a meeting with DCU with their head of nuclear medicine and over there, and it was a great meeting. And looking forward to getting her more involved in our conversation, and also growing our supply chain and our infrastructure. But with our work with workforce, the work that MedHub is doing, I really want to make sure the strategic plan covers everything. So this is taking a little bit longer than I had hoped, but we'll help her have it to you soon. I think we'll have to email it to you all and talk about how we'll vote on it. But we should have it to you guys next month. The next slide is really just to show you the growth that PGM is showing up for just $1 million. You can see this was released in January. It definitely shows that our need is high, and so we need to highlight that as well. We'll be giving these presentations, especially with Nuclear 101. Kind of rushed it, but those are things that we have going on right now. Any questions? One big news that we have is that we have a new number. Kairos Power is going to be at the 6. So I think I'm up to 14 numbers.
So in terms of process, I think what we will need to do is April will provide the draft of the strategic plan to Brandy for distribution to this group. I'll ask that you send comments back directly to April. And then I think our goal should be to have the final version ready for final approval from this authority at our next meeting. So I think my hope would be that would be all the stakeholder comments, so governor's office, everybody that needs to weigh in, and then we can do final approval so it's ready for publication after our next meeting. If that works for everyone.
And most of you guys know this, but this is an election year, so we will have a new governor. So making sure that this is, we want this prepared for the next administration, and hopefully when they start looking at their energy plan, which every governor has, from the date they're sworn in, they have 10 months to put together the energy plan, that our strategic plan will be helpfully guiding document for them.
So we just had a talk about fusion. Does that play into the strategic plan and this draft
If we're looking at it on the board here, if 2030 happens according to them, it's getting, they're included in the graph.
Well, that's a PGM graph. I don't know that. And Eric, you may want to answer that one. I will tell you about what I can hopefully use this. On the fusion company, you know, I think we'll say something very supportive of fusion advancing here in Virginia, but fusion is, you know, they are doing they're making their own paths. They're not going to follow the fusion side, and so I want to be respectful for that. I have offered to bring them on board for our workforce needs. I think there's definitely some things that we are sure are very similar, but we will have some positive language on fusion, but I wouldn't see it being a lot. It won't take up a page, I'll tell you that. Because I'm going to be respectful of what they want to do is making their own path.
Yeah, to Scott and I were talking, you know, this is demand, so demand, whether, no matter who's doing it. And even if they do commercialize, the 400 is not gonna gobble up all of our demand that we see, so. I think everybody's gonna have space in the Virginia landscape.
You need the mic. April, they can't hear you online.
But the data centers are a big deal and they're moving west. And that's, you know, there's a lot of potential projects out there. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that impacts us as well.
A couple of footnotes from discussions we've had in the last few months just on this topic, and if you see the integrated resource plan, you'll see perhaps some of this, and in our integrated resource plan for green energy, we do have small modular reactors for fission, fusion system is not, you know, but that doesn't mean it can't be a game changer. You know, that's the reason why we are supporting CFS and working with them, because we're very good at building power plants and permitting and working with all of our stakeholders, a lot of us in this room right now. So we think it's very important to continue to advance that technology, and we want to enable that and where we can, but it's not in our IRP. But we've taken more of a, you know, all of the above strategy because the demand is so strong, but we're also moving SMRs forward at the appropriate pace. And I will say one interesting footnote from this is we just did an all-hands meeting with our whole 12,000 employees the other day. If you look at our peak demand days, the top 10 are in the last 10 months. The top 10 ever peak demand is in the last year, in the last 10 months for winter peaks and summer peaks. So we talk about is it real or not, and is the data center load really showing up or not? It is showing up. You can see the issue, and you can just see in the last year what it's looked like. So you can't say for certain how much of that data center demand will turn, you know, into reality, but it's been pretty consistent here this year. Okay, any other questions on email? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Witt, which may be a familiar face to many of you, or a new face to some of you, but he's definitely in a new role. So, yeah, take it away.
Well, thank you. I've been looking forward with great anxiety to coming and standing in front of you today. We'll pull up the next slide and just kind of look at the family tree here for a little bit. And just to let you know that in 2024, we did get again fully organized. I had the privilege of being a part of that organization board. And then through a series of activities, I was convinced that I should put my name in the hat. And so I'm thrilled to be here. I'm about 1 month on the job. So I'm going to give you my 90-day plan update here in just a little bit, just so you can see. For those of you that don't know, I'll give you just a little bit of a brief history, just so you can understand why I'm thrilled about having the opportunity to do this. I'm a product of the initial product of the apprenticeship program in the state of Virginia. And I went to community college and went through GE. And in 1982, I graduated as a journeyman machinist. and then worked my way up in the organization. I was the tooling engineer for, at the time, McDermott's BMW fuel company for the first 17 or 17 fuels. And I was the tooling engineer. And that's where we learned about compressor stresses, changes of temperature, and design and manufacturing and whatever. And if you want to have sidebars with me, I can just talk about the good old days. That makes it wrong. Fast forward a little bit, in 2018, our CEO at the time convinced me to take on this topic of advanced reactors. And I said at the time, I said, Jared, I don't know advanced reactors. He said, you know field, you know business, you will figure it out. And so that's when I began this journey of beginning to engage with what was actually happening in the industry. And at the time, my biggest concern was, were we as a supply chain and supplier, were we really poised for what was going to happen? Because at the time, I started working on higher enrichment fuels and so forth. And so that's led me on a journey where many of the people that we're talking to here in the state of Virginia, I have relationships with. I was the guy that negotiated the first fuel contract with NUSA. And so we understood the nuances and the needs that someone is developing new technology was going to need to be able to do supply and work in supply chain. So I just give you a little bit of my history. And if you want to have lunch with me or whatever, I'll sit down and we can take a deep dive on that. But going to that in 2024, we reorganized, and then I came on after over 31 years of Framatome, took a very brief retirement and joined the Gen Pop. So I'm glad to be here. So let me hit the next slide with you, and you can stop me at any point in here. But just as a reminder that our hub charter really captures the vision of the Commonwealth, where we can be the leader. And as I've gotten engaged in this, and I look at the Commonwealth of Virginia, if you sit down and look at where we have across the state, we are a nuclear state. In the fact that we have the resources, we have the workforce, we have the supply chain, we have the utilities, we have that experience. And so I see the mission of the hub to really be a facilitating arm, to really help them to define and deploy projects that will help serve this vision. And so that's where I'm taking the deeper dive that we've taken with the board and being able to do that. We have two pillars. Those pillars are, I consider them synergistic. R&D is somewhat in the middle of that for technology and deployment, understanding that that has to mesh with what we have to do with the workforce, that has to mesh with how we basically then help communicate what we're doing in the Commonwealth of Virginia as well. My personal leadership vision as I've gotten into this, I wrote it down, is to see the mission of the hub realized as soon as possible with anchor projects that demonstrate the collaborative power of Virginia to create durable momentum for a robust workforce in the supply chain and help with the research capability that's going to be needed for the new energy for the economy. That's just kind of where you know where my vision statement is personally as a leader. Just going to the next slide, this is those three pillars. Then let me give you my 90-day update. And let me joke and say that Tom and I used to work together, and I said I retired from Framatome, and now I have to come and report back to Tom. So that's part of my joke. All right, let's go to the next slide. I put together kind of my 90-day plan as executive director. The first one is the people. And have had some very great deep engagements with the DOE, the Department of Commerce, the EPP, the university leadership and the thought leaders. We have some really great thought leaders in our universities and our community college systems, as well as I've engaged with the federal DOE, which I've had a long-standing relationship, and then the core of that. Been listening to the needs, looking for the opportunities, and really then beginning to work with the board to develop a path forward. It's a very durable path forward for us in the Commonwealth. I jokingly say my tour duty in telecom, the life cycle of the project was anywhere from 3 months to 14 months. And then nuclear just changing the fuel designs 10 years. So we have to think in terms of what it takes to be durable and how we're actually helping deploy nuclear energy in the Commonwealth. And it's a long project. Started looking at the first, what I call anchor projects. The anchor projects that I've been looking at is, the first one is evaluating those, take a deeper dive on it. What would a research and field look like for the Commonwealth of Virginia? And you say, why would you do that? Well, right now, a lot of the people that are coming here, they're very highly dependent upon the national labs that have a very high backlog. And if you sat down and worked with some of the other universities that have very niche, and if we could take a step back in the Commonwealth of Virginia and say, what would a research test reactor look like for us to be able to serve? And think of this in the terms, the research reactors that are at the universities now are based on 50-year technology plus. If you sit down and look at what the needs are for the new materials or whatever, I think it's time for a fresh vision. And I personally believe that Virginia can help lead in that vision. So just letting you know, that's one of the anchor projects that I'm working really hard to say, what would that look like collaboratively across the Commonwealth? The second one is the materials challenges that happen. Commonwealth Fusion and Case and Form and others. There are some very unique material challenges that come beyond the light water reactor technology. Remember, we've got multi-decades of experience on materials reliability in our current fleet, but these new fleets, such as Kairos and others, are going to have different licensing challenges, deployment, material reliability, operability challenges. So the other thing that I've been meeting with the university leadership on is what is a collaborative approach of looking at the material sciences in such a way that Virginia would be someone that could help lead that. The third thing I'm looking at is the nuclear workforce. There's a lot of studies on workforce, I'm wanting to take a step back a little bit and say, let's put a predictive view of that. Let's sit down and look at what would Commonwealth Fusion in the 2030s look like. How would that factor in the workforce? How would that factor in the decisions for deciding the new technologies going to come in? So we're taking a step back and looking at that. And back to April's point, to help inform the strategic plan, let's get something that has some granularity in the baseline and we can reflect back on. And then the supply chain. We are a nuclear state with about 58 companies across the state that have what I call a nuclear or pre-nuclear pedigree. How do we look at that and use that to actually leverage that? Not only supply what's coming into Virginia. If I'm sounding like an elevator speech, I'm sorry, I don't mean that, but I'm pretty passionate about this because I think we can deploy in Virginia, we can supply from Virginia. We have that pedigree here, and so how we stand that up is something that I'm trying to take a deep dive on. The other thing is processes. Anytime you start something new, you have to start a bunch of new processes. This is my third startup, and enjoying that. And then the other one is publicity. Virginia has a story to tell, and we need to be cognizant. So April, I've been working with April. We've been looking at what an integrated communication plan was. So we're fully aligned with the Commonwealth and what we need to be able to do here. And then I will move forward. That's the picture. That is the Commonwealth of Virginia. Utilities, nuclear, Navy, academia, industry, and federal. And so we have a lot to offer. And I'm committed to doing my best to be able to bring projects that will be successful. Here's your executive director's speech. I'm open for questions. Don't let April have the mic.
So there is some, I have some questions about because there is some overlap between affairs and FinHub. And we know that, and we're working together to work through those things. We're working one of those. But I will have to say there was one thing that we did this last fall and into the winter, where we worked on a DOE grant for workforce, and it was really nice to see FinHub up and running and actually working, and it brought a lot. We together brought a lot of the stakeholders together. We came up with a good proposal. We were part of a bigger group, the Southeast states, but it was really nice to see FinHub up and running and actually working. And you feel like a really good part of the proposal. But FinHub is more the technical side. I'm more the outreach and the policy side. That's how we're kind of breaking it up. But there is some overlaps. As I told Jeff the other day, we're married. We just have to figure out how to work this out.
And it's a good point. I kind of see what we can do is how we tag in the projects and move them quickly and efficiently. And even the conversation I'm having about research and testing activity. What we will go through in vetting that out will teach us a lot, and we can then use to inform how we can do additional investment decisions and track things for the Commonwealth as well. So I'm going to be very project focused and also people focused. And I think seeing as a resource before, if you came to see me, I was working for a supplier and I had to keep a certain hat on. I'm
I'm not bound by that anymore. And so if I can be a technical resource for you to be able to reach you, let me know. I'll be more technical.
And, Jeff, one question. Just give you my view on workforce challenges. So we use that term a lot and fairly generically have workforce challenges. The workforce challenge, so I have 3,500 people working in 3 states, 4 plants, 7 reactors. And getting those people, training them, making them proficient to be experts in what they do every day is something that we have to unpack. Like we're very good at that as a nuclear industry. The challenges I run into from the workforce standpoint is typically the trades and bringing in all of the extra resources I need to do critical maintenance activities. You know, we do an outage, we shut down for nominally a month. We bring in 1,000 people to come work on the reactor. That's where I see the biggest gap. And it's not just Virginia, but Virginia is a big piece of that. So I'll just talk about Virginia, especially with it. But I just wanted your thoughts on that, and we're doing work to bolster the trades for research.
Yeah, we are. And as I've come in early, I've actually sat in on, John Capps, I appreciate this. I've sat in on some of the conversations we've been having with the different community colleges. My initial observation was, is that the relationships that the companies have with the local trades are truly, they seem like they're sponsoring the work they want to do. Take a step back and make it omnibus economy. How do you mesh that together? That's what's going to happen. You start bringing new, like when AP starts building, you start building something new in power fusion technology. It's going to create a demand on resources that could be disruptive to the stability of the existing technology. I think somehow we've got to factor that in. And I'll say this, I don't know what I don't know. So, and the reason to bring this topics in front of you is if you've got people in your organization that should be at the table as part of those studies, please let me know who they are. And then we'll get them tapped in so that at a minimum, there'll be an information source or a reviewer so we can bring credibility to the plan. And I see the inputs we need to do is some baseline is based on a set of assumptions. So right now, the assumptions are if we stay steady state, what does it look like? But all of a sudden, what if we deploy 3 new reactors in the Commonwealth over the next decade? That's no longer steady state. That's a demand that I think we need to predict or put some probability on it. And then it helps inform you as an industry, you as academia, you as that are actually helping that. So you can have a sense of what the plan for them. What that helps.
We did, our first meeting was at the meeting, Todd Flowers spent, we only planned to speak for like an hour, I think we went on for 2, talking about where we're at, and nuclear, with the community colleges. But I think the big thing has been the last few meetings is really learning from each other and having community colleges really start to understand the industry. So we had a meeting at Dominion, they did a tour at Ramazone, and our last meeting was them giving us presentations of what they have as well. So we can just find ways to build off of, because you're right, the trades are very important. And, you know, the community colleges are really taking a lot of time to learn, and we're taking some time to just learn the opportunities that we have to work with them.
So in terms of projects, are you looking at accelerated living nuclear reactors?
Not on the initial list. Are we open to it? But all of the, I've actually met and talking about this already. Technology, I've actually do press conferences as well. It's in that second tier of conversations as well as AI. I have somewhat of an interest on AI because AI could be a great asset for us, or it could be an impediment for us depending on how we do it. And I haven't got to that, so I've got a couple of university visits planned, so I can just get into that and try to understand what are those disruptive or beneficial things that are coming ahead of us that we need to be considering. And so let me go in. Part of my job is to be able to get in durable enough funds so that I can actually do some more studies on this to help inform us. So I'm getting ready to go after another 2 the grants so we can actually do some smaller studies to try to inform some of this.
Other questions? Okay, and Jeff will be a regular member of our meetings, just like April, so. Mark, Calvin, Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff, I'd like to invite you to visit us at Hampton University. We're building a tabletop fusion system, fusion reactor kind of system. It's called accelerator, kind of like the company Type 1 Energy, kind of like what they're doing. They're the second largest fusion company in the world. They are collaborating with people at Commonwealth to actually build their own superconducting magnets. So anyway, if you come to visit us in Hampton, talk to you about what the tabletop version of this looks like. It's called Starlight. Yeah, the star part is for the accelerator for training and research. And the light part, the LIT, is to learn interesting things every day.
Thank you for your invitation. Great. So next is the approval of the minutes. Then I'm going to need time to go over those before we entertain a motion to approve. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Eric, first, second. Dr. Lowe, all in favor? Opposed? So Larry, I think, mentioned the big announcement with the simulator at George Mason, which is great, but I wanted to open it up if there are any other member announcements that we wanted to go over. There's plenty of news. I don't think I need to go through everything. Brandy sent out the re-release of the RFP from DOE yesterday on the SMR commercialization grants, which I'm sure that there weren't the major changes on the community benefits plan, which actually was just removed. So I imagine the resubmittals won't be too terribly difficult for folks that are resubmitting. And then, the rest of the stuff, there's still a lot of to be determined with the new administration, although I would say that new Secretary of Energy and Secretary of Interior have also very, very positive things about nuclear. So I think as those get more organized and staffs get more in place, that should be moving forward. And for those of you who've been around the industry for quite some time, Ted Garrish should be a familiar name. Ted has, Scott and I joked, I think he's hit DOE bingo in terms of different presidentially appointed roles, but he'll be back in the Office of Nuclear Energy once confirmed. I still haven't seen a hearing date for that, but hopefully in the next couple of months he'll be a really good leader of the Office of Nuclear Energy. So, any other member updates or other news people wanted to go over? Yeah, just a few updates. I think everyone knows, but we continue to work through major plant upgrades for the 4 reactors we have in Virginia. We have over $1 billion that we're investing in each reactor. For about the next 8 years or so, we're a few years into these projects. So we have about 50 projects which are between the two. And we're taking outages during the normal maintenance and refueling outages, taking opportunities to upgrade those plants with a number of different new pumps, new heat exchangers. We're moving towards a digital control room and working with the NRC and what licensing of the safety related aspects of that look like. They're all the non-safety sides of the digital components are moving forward really well. We're in the middle of a North Anna Unit 2 outage right now, and upgrading all of their overhead enunciators to be digital, just like the other units. So we're making really great projects at the progress at the Virginia sites in upgrading these units. They're all licensed to 80 years now, and Dominion has also expects our 80-year license for our BC Summers plant in South Carolina this summer, and we'll be applying for our Milson facilities in 2027. So all of our plants will be going to 80 years. So really, it's good progress on the license extension standpoint. And then from the SMR standpoint, probably I know we put the RFP out last year. We got a lot of responses back, a lot of back and forth, and finalized what the responses look like and the Q&A aspects of that. early this year, and we're actively working through all of those responses. We got a really great response from technology providers, and we're working through a number of different responses right now. And in 2025, we expect to select the technology, and we're working through the process very diligently internally and with external expertise on that as well. So that process is going very well. And then, of course, we're also developing the North Anna work to continue North Anna 3 as potentially our first site. If we were to build the first SMR, working on extending our early site permit to enable that site to be utilized. So we one of the first in the industry. Actually, I think we'll be the first in the industry to extend an early site permit. So we're working with NEI and the NRC and another utility. Entergy will be working together to partner around what that process will look like, but basically work with the NRC to define that process. But we expect that to be successful. And but that development work is going very well. It's a very viable site, seeing all the work that we had done on that in the past. But that's about it. So it's looking real positive for SMRs, and this year we should have some news on what next step looks like. Okay, Greg, do we have anybody from the public on the line? I didn't see anybody. Okay, so I don't believe we have any public comments unless there's any other comments from the group. We can go ahead and wrap up. Thank you, everybody. We'll send out a doodle poll for the next meeting. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. And looking at dates, but we'll probably want to make sure we have a review of the strategic plan first, and then we'll send out the dates. Thank you.